The small aircraft cut through the gray Alaskan sky like a silver bullet. Jake Rivers gripped the controls with steady hands, his eyes focused on the instrument panel in front of him. Snow was falling harder now, and the wind was getting stronger. His 16-year-old daughter Maya sat in the passenger seat, looking out at the white landscape below them. "Dad, the weather is getting really bad," Maya said, her voice carrying a note of worry. She had been on many flights with her father, but this storm looked different, meaner. Jake nodded but kept his voice calm. "We'll be fine, honey. This bird can handle a lot worse than some snow." He patted the dashboard of his prototype aircraft. The machine was his latest creation, packed with technology that most people could only dream of. Advanced navigation, systems, powerful engines, and an artificial intelligence that could practically fly itself. But even the best technology had its limits. The first sign of trouble came without warning. The main display screen flickered once, then twice. Jake frowned and tapped it with his finger. The screen went black for a moment, then came back to life showing numbers that made no sense. "What's wrong?" Maya asked. She had spent enough time around her father's inventions to know when something wasn't working right. "Not sure yet," Jake said, trying different controls. The AI assistant that usually helped him fly was making strange beeping sounds. The navigation system was showing their location in 3 different places at once. Probably just interference from the storm. But deep down, Jake knew this wasn't normal interference. He had flown through worse storms before, and his equipment had never acted like this. The backup systems should have kicked in by now. Instead, more warnings started flashing on his screen. Maya pulled out her tablet and started typing quickly. "Dad, I'm getting weird readings too. My GPS is jumping all over the place and my internet connection keeps cutting out." Jake felt a cold knot form in his stomach. When multiple systems failed at the same time, it usually meant something serious was wrong. He tried the radio, hoping to contact the nearest airport or control tower. Nothing but static came through the speakers. "Emergency systems," Jake said, to himself, flipping switches and pressing buttons. The emergency beacon should work even if everything else failed. It was designed to send out a signal that rescue teams could track for hundreds of miles. But when he activated it, the light that should have turned green stayed dark. The aircraft shuddered as a strong gust of wind hit it from the side. Jake fought to keep control, but the steering felt sluggish and unresponsive. The engines were still running, but something was definitely wrong with the flight controls. "Dad, we're losing altitude," Maya said, pointing at the altimeter. The needle was dropping steadily. Jake tried to pull up, but the aircraft barely responded. It was like trying to fly through thick mud. Whatever was affecting their electronics was also messing with the mechanical systems. The advanced fly-by-wire technology that made the aircraft so smooth and easy to control was turning against them. "Maya, put on your safety harness and make sure it's tight," Jake said, his voice still calm but more serious now. "We might have to make an emergency landing." Maya's eyes went wide, but she didn't panic. She had inherited her father's ability to stay cool under pressure. She checked her harness and then started securing loose items in the cabin. "Where are we going to land? There's nothing but trees and snow down there." Jake scanned the landscape below them. Maya was right. The Alaskan wilderness stretched out in all directions, covered in thick snow and dense forests. There were no roads, no clearings, no safe places to put down an aircraft, but they were running out of options fast. The engines started making a grinding noise that Jake had never heard before. The sound sent chills down his spine. He had designed these engines himself, and he knew every sound they should make. This wasn't one of them. "Emergency landing procedures," Jake said, more to himself than to Maya. He had practiced this scenario hundreds of times in simulators, but the real thing was completely different. His hands moved quickly over the controls, shutting down non-essential systems and preparing the aircraft for impact. The ground was rushing up at them now. Jake could see individual trees and rocks through the swirling snow. He aimed for what looked like a small clearing between 2 hills, hoping the snow would be deep enough to cushion their landing. "Hold on, Maya!" he shouted. The aircraft hit the ground hard, bouncing once before skidding across the snow. Trees flashed past the windows as they slid sideways down a small slope. Metal screamed against rock and ice. The left wing caught a large boulder and spun them around. Finally, with a grinding crash that seemed to go on forever, they came to a stop. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the sound of wind outside and the tick of cooling metal. Jake's ears were ringing, and his shoulder hurt where the harness had dug in, but he was alive. He turned to check on Maya. "You okay?" he asked. Maya was holding her left leg and wincing, but she nodded. "I think I twisted my ankle when we hit, but I'm okay. What about you?" Jake did a quick check of himself. Bruises and sore muscles, but nothing broken. "I'm fine. Let me see that ankle." He unbuckled his harness and carefully examined Maya's leg. It was swollen, but didn't seem to be broken. "Just a sprain, I think. We'll need to keep it elevated and iced." Jake looked around the cabin. The crash had thrown equipment everywhere, but most of it seemed intact. His laptop was still in its reinforced case, and Maya's tablet had survived in her backpack. Some of the aircraft's systems were still working, judging by the blinking lights on the emergency panel. "First things first," Jake said. "We need to get warm and take stock of what we have." He tried the radio one more time, but still got nothing but static. The emergency beacon was completely dead. Whatever had caused their systems to fail was still affecting their electronics. Maya pointed toward the front window. "Dad, look." Jake followed her gaze and felt his blood turn cold. About 50 yards away, barely visible through the falling snow, he could see shapes moving between the trees. At first he thought they might be caribou or moose, but as his eyes adjusted, he realized what they were: wolves. A whole pack of them, and they were watching the crashed aircraft with an interest that seemed almost human. Jake stared at the wolves through the cracked front window of their crashed aircraft. The pack stood perfectly still in the falling snow, their yellow eyes fixed on the wreckage. There were at least 8 of them, maybe more hidden behind the trees. What bothered Jake most was how they positioned themselves. It wasn't random like wild animals usually did. They formed a careful circle around the crash site, like soldiers taking positions. "Dad, why aren't they moving?" Maya whispered. She was trying to keep her injured ankle elevated on a piece of luggage, but her eyes never left the wolves. "I don't know," Jake said quietly. Normal wolves would either run away from a crash like this or they'd come closer to investigate. These ones are just watching. The storm was getting worse. Wind howled around the damaged aircraft and snow piled up against the broken windows. Jake knew they needed to do something fast, or they would freeze to death before any rescue team could find them. But first, he had to deal with the wolf problem. Jake started going through the equipment that had survived the crash. His toolkit was intact, along with several electronic devices and emergency supplies. The aircraft's battery system was damaged, but still working partially. He could use that power to create heat and maybe fix their communication equipment. "Maya, can you help me with something?" Jake asked. "I need you to watch those wolves while I work. Tell me if they do anything unusual." Maya nodded and kept her eyes on the pack outside. Jake began pulling apart some of the aircraft's internal systems. He needed to build a heater first, then work on getting a distress signal out. The emergency supplies included some basic tools and a small medical kit, but not much else. As Jake worked, Maya kept giving him updates. "Dad, something weird is happening. The wolves keep looking at each other, like they're talking or something. And they're not hunting. I've watched nature documentaries with you before. Wolves should be looking for food, but these ones are only interested in our plane." Jake paused in his work. Maya was right. He had seen wolves in the wild before, and their behavior was all wrong. These animals seemed more interested in the technology around them than in the humans inside the aircraft. After an hour of work, Jake had managed to create a small heating system using parts from the aircraft's electrical system. The cabin started to warm up and Maya looked more comfortable, but the communication equipment was more complicated. Every time he tried to get a signal out, the system would work for a few seconds and then shut down completely. "It's like something is blocking our signals," Jake muttered, staring at the radio equipment. "But that's impossible. We're in the middle of nowhere." Maya had been quiet for the last few minutes, watching the wolves with growing concern. "Dad, you need to see this. The wolves are doing something really strange." Jake looked up from his work and followed Maya's pointing finger. 3 of the wolves had moved closer to the aircraft, but they weren't approaching like normal animals. They were examining the wreckage methodically, walking around it in patterns. One wolf was sniffing at the broken wing, another was looking closely at the engine, and the third was staring directly at the communication antenna. "That's not normal animal behavior," Jake said slowly. "It's like they know what they're looking at." As if responding to his words, the wolves suddenly stopped their examination and looked directly at him through the window. All 3 pairs of eyes focused on Jake with an intelligence that made his skin crawl. For a long moment they stared at each other through the glass. Then the wolves backed away and rejoined the rest of the pack. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold weather. "Maya, I want you to keep watching them. I'm going to try something." He turned back to the communication equipment and started it up again. As soon as the radio began transmitting, all 8 wolves immediately turned toward the aircraft. They didn't just look in the general direction. They looked exactly at the communication antenna, as if they could see the radio waves. Jake quickly shut off the radio. The wolves relaxed and went back to their previous positions. "They're reacting to our electronics," Jake said, his voice filled with disbelief. "But how is that possible?" Maya was staring at the wolves with a mix of fear and fascination. "Dad, I think there's something else. Look at their eyes when the light hits them." Jake squinted through the snow and saw what Maya meant. When the dim afternoon light caught the wolves' eyes, they reflected it back in a way that seemed wrong. The reflection was too bright, too focused. It reminded him of the way camera lenses reflected light, not animal eyes. "Those aren't normal eye reflections," Jake said. "Animal eyes reflect light in specific ways depending on the species, but these..." He trailed off as one of the wolves moved into a better position where the light hit its eyes directly. The reflection wasn't yellow or green like wolf eyes should be. It was a cold, metallic blue. Jake felt his heart rate increase. He had seen that kind of reflection before, in his own laboratory when testing optical sensors and camera equipment. Those weren't biological eyes reflecting light. They were artificial. "Maya, I need you to be very calm about what I'm going to tell you," Jake said, keeping his voice steady. "I don't think those are real wolves." Maya turned to look at her father. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I think they're machines. Very sophisticated ones, but machines nonetheless. The way they react to our electronics, the way they move in patterns, the way their eyes reflect light, none of it is natural." Maya stared at the wolves again, this time with new understanding. "But they look so real. How is that possible?" "I don't know," Jake admitted. "The technology required to create realistic animal robots like that is far beyond anything I've ever seen. And why would someone put robotic wolves in the middle of Alaska?" As if they could hear the conversation, the wolves suddenly began moving again. But this time, their behavior was completely different. They spread out in a perfect attack formation, moving with mechanical precision. There was no longer any pretense of natural animal behavior. Jake quickly grabbed the emergency flare gun from the survival kit. "Maya, get ready to move to the back of the cabin. I think they're about to." The first wolf charged toward the aircraft, moving faster than any real wolf could run. Its movements were too smooth, too perfect. Jake could hear a faint mechanical whirring sound as it approached. The wolf leaped directly at the front window with inhuman force. The glass, already cracked from the crash, shattered completely. Jake fired the flare gun, and the bright red flare struck the wolf in the chest. Instead of yelping or falling back like an injured animal would, the wolf simply stopped in midair and crashed to the ground. Sparks flew from its chest where the flare had hit, and Jake could see damaged circuits and metal framework beneath what had looked like real fur. "Maya, we need to get out of here right now," Jake said, grabbing their emergency supplies. "These things aren't trying to hunt us. They're trying to stop us from calling for help." Jake helped Maya move to the back of the aircraft as fast as her injured ankle would allow. The damaged robotic wolf lay on the ground outside, sparks still flying from its chest. The other wolves had backed away after seeing their companion fall, but they hadn't left. They stood in a wider circle now, watching and waiting. "Dad, what are those things?" Maya asked, her voice shaking. She stared at the broken machine that had looked so much like a real wolf just minutes before. "I wish I knew," Jake said, checking the emergency supplies. They had a thermal imaging camera that he used for testing aircraft engines. Maybe it would show him something about these machines that his eyes couldn't see. But we're going to find out. Jake turned on the thermal camera and pointed it toward the remaining wolves. What he saw on the screen made his blood run cold. Real wolves would show up as warm, living bodies on thermal imaging. These creatures showed up as complex networks of heat sources, engines, circuits, and power systems. But there was something else inside each one that glowed much hotter than any machine should. "Maya, look at this," Jake said, showing her the screen. "These aren't just robots, there's something alive inside each one. Something that generates a lot of heat." Maya studied the thermal image carefully. She had always been good with technology, and she could see the patterns Jake was talking about. "Dad, that looks like something is controlling the robot from inside, like a pilot in a plane." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air coming through the broken window. "You're right. Something is inside these machines operating them. But what kind of creature would need to hide inside robot wolves?" He adjusted the thermal camera to get a better look at the heat sources inside the robots. The controlling organisms were small, about the size of a house cat, but they generated intense heat. Their body temperature was much higher than any Earth animal could survive. "They're not from here," Jake said quietly. "No animal on Earth has a body temperature that high. These are aliens, Maya. Aliens controlling robot animals." Maya stared at her father in disbelief. "Aliens? Dad, are you serious?" "Look at the evidence," Jake said, pointing to the thermal screen. "Robotic animals with alien pilots in the middle of Alaska, interfering with our communications. What else could it be?" As if to prove his point, the remaining wolves began moving again, but this time they didn't approach the aircraft. Instead, they spread out in different directions, each one taking a position where they could watch the surrounding area. It looked like they were setting up some kind of surveillance network. Jake realized something that made his stomach turn. "Maya, I think we stumbled into something much bigger than a simple crash. These things have been here for a while, watching and learning, and now they know we've discovered them." Maya pulled out her laptop computer, which had survived the crash, in her backpack. "Dad, if these are really aliens using robot animals, maybe I can figure out how they communicate. All machines need some kind of signal to coordinate with each other." Jake nodded. Maya was incredibly smart with computers and electronics. If anyone could figure out how these alien machines worked, it would be her. "What do you need?" "Help me set up the laptop to scan for radio signals," Maya said. "If these robots are talking to each other or to something else, we might be able to listen in." Jake used parts from the aircraft's communication system to build a makeshift antenna for Maya's laptop. It took almost an hour, but finally they had a system that could detect a wide range of electronic signals. What they found was terrifying. "Dad, there are hundreds of signals out there," Maya said, staring at her screen in shock. "These wolves are talking to other groups all over Alaska, and they're not just communicating with each other. They're sending information somewhere else, somewhere far away." Jake looked at the signal patterns on Maya's screen. The data was flowing in two directions. The local robots were collecting information and sending it upward, while commands and instructions were coming down from above. "They're reporting to a mothership or base station. This is a reconnaissance mission." Maya continued analyzing the signals. Her face grew pale as she decoded more of the data. "Dad, I think I can understand some of this. They're not just watching us, they've been studying humans for months, maybe longer. Look at this data: population centers, military bases, technology levels. They're gathering intelligence for an invasion." Jake felt the weight of what they had discovered. These alien scouts had been watching Earth, learning about human capabilities and weaknesses. And now that they had been discovered, Jake and Maya were the only ones who knew the truth. "We have to warn someone," Jake said. "If there's going to be an invasion, Earth needs to prepare." But even as he said it, Jake realized the problem. Their communication equipment was being blocked by the aliens. Every time they tried to send a signal, the robotic wolves interfered. The aliens weren't just watching. They were making sure no warnings got out. Maya was still working on her laptop trying to understand more of the alien communications. "Dad, I think I found something important. These robots have a weakness. They rely on quantum communication links to stay connected to their base. If we could disrupt those links, the robots would be cut off from their controllers," Jake finished. "But how do we disrupt quantum communications? That's beyond anything I've ever worked with." Maya smiled for the first time since the crash. "Maybe not. I've been reading about quantum interference in my computer science classes. If we can generate the right kind of electromagnetic pulse, we might be able to scramble their quantum signals temporarily." Jake looked at his daughter with new respect. "What would we need to build something like that?" "Most of the parts are right here in the aircraft," Maya said. "The power cells, the navigation computer, even some of the engine components. We'd be building a one-shot electromagnetic pulse generator. It would probably destroy most of our electronics, but it might give us a chance to get a warning signal out." Outside, the robotic wolves seemed to sense that something was changing. They began moving closer to the aircraft again, but more cautiously this time. Their alien controllers had learned to respect the humans' ability to fight back. Jake started gathering the components Maya would need. "How long do you think it will take to build this pulse generator?" "A few hours if we work fast," Maya said. "But Dad, there's something else. While I was analyzing their communications, I found out why they chose wolves as their disguise." "Why?" "Wolves are pack hunters. They work together, they're smart, and they can survive in harsh environments. But most importantly, humans respect wolves. We don't usually shoot them on sight like we would other predators. The aliens chose the perfect disguise to get close to human settlements without raising suspicion." Jake realized the full scope of the alien plan. Robot wolves could move freely through wilderness areas near human towns and cities. They could observe, gather intelligence, and report back without anyone suspecting they weren't real animals. It was a perfect spy network. "How many of them are out there?" Jake asked. Maya checked her signal analysis again. "Based on the communication patterns, I'd guess there are thousands of these robots spread across North America, maybe tens of thousands worldwide. The invasion force would know everything about human military capabilities, population centers, and technology levels before they ever showed themselves. Earth would be fighting an enemy that had been studying them for months, maybe years." "Maya, we're not just trying to survive anymore," Jake said grimly. "We might be the only people who can stop an alien invasion." Jake and Maya worked through the night, taking apart their crashed aircraft piece by piece. The robotic wolves kept their distance but never left. They formed a tight circle around the wreckage, watching every move the humans made. Jake could feel their alien controllers studying him and Maya, learning from their actions. "Hand me that power coupling," Jake said, reaching for a component from the aircraft's engine system. His hands were numb from the cold, but he forced himself to keep working. Maya was sitting cross-legged on the floor, her injured ankle wrapped in strips torn from their emergency blankets. Her laptop was connected to a mess of wires and circuits that she had pulled from various aircraft systems. "Dad, I think I figured out how their quantum communication works," Maya said, not looking up from her screen. "It's actually pretty simple. They use paired particles to send information instantly across any distance. But the connection is fragile. If we can create enough electromagnetic interference in the right frequency range, we can break the links." Jake paused in his work to look at what Maya had built. She had turned her laptop into a sophisticated signal analysis system using parts from their aircraft. The screen showed wave patterns and frequency charts that even Jake had trouble understanding. "You did all this yourself?" he asked, impressed. Maya smiled. "I had a good teacher. Plus, I've been taking advanced computer science classes online. Quantum communication theory is actually taught in some college courses now." Jake felt proud of his daughter, but also worried. They were attempting something that professional scientists would find challenging, using parts from a crashed aircraft in the middle of a blizzard. If they failed, no one would ever know about the alien invasion until it was too late. Okay, so we can break their communication links, Jake said. But how do we use that to get a warning out? Our own radio is still being blocked. Maya pointed to a pile of components they had salvaged. While their communications are down, we'll have a small window where they can't interfere with our signals. We build a high-power transmitter and blast out a warning message on every frequency we can. Reach military bases, airports, emergency services, anyone who will listen. Jake looked at the parts Maya was pointing to. It was possible, but it would require combining the aircraft's main power system with its navigation computer and communication array. If we do this, we'll be using every bit of power we have left, one shot, and then we're completely dead in the water. It's worth the risk, Maya said firmly. If we don't warn people, the aliens will complete their reconnaissance and launch their invasion. Earth won't stand a chance against an enemy that knows all our weaknesses. Jake nodded. His daughter was right. They had to try, even if it meant using up their last resources. He began connecting the power couplings while Maya worked on the software that would control their electromagnetic pulse generator. Outside, the robotic wolves seemed to sense that something was happening. They began moving in tighter circles around the aircraft, and Jake could hear faint mechanical sounds as they adjusted their sensors and weapon systems. They know we're building something, Jake said. We need to work faster. Maya's fingers flew across her keyboard as she wrote the code that would coordinate their attack. Dad, I need you to help me with something else. While we're disrupting their communications, I want to try hacking into their network. If I can plant a virus in their system, it might spread to other robot groups. Jake stopped working and stared at his daughter. Maya, that's incredibly dangerous. If they detect what you're doing, they'll attack us immediately. They're going to attack us anyway, Maya pointed out. At least this way we might be able to help other people fight back. Imagine if every robot wolf on Earth suddenly stopped working properly. Jake realized that Maya was thinking like a true strategist. She wasn't just trying to survive or escape. She was trying to give humanity every possible advantage in the coming war. It was the kind of thinking that had made humans the dominant species on Earth. What kind of virus are you planning to create? Jake asked. Maya grinned. Something that will make them very confused. I'm going to reverse their command protocol so they start sending false information back to their controllers. Instead of reporting human weaknesses, they'll report human strengths. Instead of mapping our defenses, they'll create fake maps showing defenses that don't exist. Jake laughed despite their dangerous situation. That's brilliant. The aliens will prepare for the wrong kind of resistance. They worked for 3 more hours, building their electromagnetic pulse generator and preparing Maya's computer virus. The device they created looked like a strange combination of aircraft parts and laptop components, held together with emergency tape and wire. It wasn't pretty, but Jake was confident it would work. Testing phase, Maya announced. She activated a small version of their pulse generator, creating a weak electromagnetic field. Immediately, 2 of the nearest robotic wolves stumbled and fell over. Their alien controllers had lost connection for just a few seconds, but it was enough to prove that their plan would work. The fallen robots got back up quickly, but Jake had seen what he needed to see. It works. The full-power version should be able to disrupt every robot within a few miles. Maya was already preparing her virus, loading it into a transmitter that would inject the malicious code into the alien network during the brief window when their defenses were down. Dad, once we activate this, everything happens fast. We'll have maybe 30 seconds to get our warning message out before they recover. Jake prepared their emergency transmitter, loading it with a recorded message, explaining the alien threat and providing technical details about the robotic scouts. The message would go out on multiple frequencies, reaching military bases, civilian authorities, and amateur radio operators across North America. Are you ready? Jake asked. Maya nodded, her hand hovering over the activation button. Remember, once we do this, we can't undo it. We'll be completely defenseless afterward. Then we better make it count, Jake said. Maya pressed the button. The electromagnetic pulse generator roared to life, drawing power from every system in their aircraft. The lights inside the cabin flickered and went out as massive amounts of energy flowed through their improvised weapon. Outside, all 7 remaining robotic wolves collapsed instantly. Their quantum communication links were severed, leaving the alien controllers inside completely cut off from their command structure. For the first time since the crash, the area around their aircraft was truly quiet. Jake activated their emergency transmitter, sending their warning message out on every frequency their system could reach. At the same time, Maya's virus shot through the disrupted alien network, spreading like wildfire to robot groups across the continent. Message transmitted, Jake reported. Your virus? Uploaded and spreading, Maya said, watching data flow across her screen. It's already reached at least 50 other robot groups. Within an hour, it should contaminate their entire North American network. Outside, the robotic wolves were starting to move again, but something was wrong with them. They moved in jerky, uncontrolled motions, as if their alien pilots were having trouble controlling their mechanical bodies. Maya's virus was already beginning to work. Dad, look. Maya pointed to her signal analysis screen. Their communications are completely scrambled. They're sending random data back to their base instead of useful intelligence. Jake felt a surge of hope. They had done it, against impossible odds, using nothing but salvaged aircraft parts and teenage ingenuity. They had struck the first blow in humanity's war against an alien invasion. But their victory came with a price. Their aircraft was now completely dead, with no power for heat or communications. And outside, 7 very angry robotic wolves were beginning to recover from the electromagnetic pulse, preparing for one final attack. The cabin of the crashed aircraft was now completely dark and growing colder by the minute. Jake could see his breath in the frigid air as he and Maya prepared for what might be their final battle. Outside, the 7 robotic wolves were slowly getting back on their feet, but their movements were wrong. They stumbled like drunk animals, shaking their heads and bumping into trees. The virus is working better than I thought, Maya said, watching the confused robots through the broken window. Their alien pilots are having trouble controlling the mechanical bodies, but Dad, they're still dangerous. A confused robot wolf is probably more dangerous than a normal one. Jake had been thinking the same thing. He gathered the remaining components from their aircraft, looking for anything that could be turned into a weapon. They had used most of their power for the electromagnetic pulse, but there were still some systems that might work. Maya, can you keep monitoring their communications while I build us some defenses? Jake asked. I want to know if they're calling for backup. Maya nodded and turned back to her laptop. Even though the main power was dead, her computer was running on its internal battery. Dad, this is interesting. They're trying to communicate with their base, but my virus is scrambling their messages. Instead of asking for help, they're sending reports that everything is normal and that humans are much weaker than originally thought. Jake smiled grimly as he worked on converting aircraft parts into weapons. Maya's virus wasn't just disrupting the local robots. It was feeding false information to the entire alien command structure. The invaders would receive completely wrong intelligence about human capabilities. What about other robot groups? Jake asked. Is the virus spreading? It's everywhere, Maya said excitedly. The virus has infected robot wolves across Canada, Alaska, and the northern United States. Thousands of them are now sending false reports back to the alien fleet. The invaders are going to think humans are primitive and defenseless when we're actually much more capable than they realize. Jake felt proud of his daughter's accomplishment. In a few hours, a 16-year-old girl had created a computer virus that was confusing an entire alien intelligence network. It was exactly the kind of human achievement that would surprise their enemies. But their immediate problem was still the 7 damaged robots outside. Jake had managed to build 2 more electromagnetic pulse devices using smaller aircraft components. They wouldn't be as powerful as the first one, but they might be enough to disable individual robots. Dad, they're getting organized again, Maya warned. The aliens are learning to compensate for the virus. Their movements are getting steadier. Jake looked outside and saw that Maya was right. The robotic wolves were shaking off the effects of the electromagnetic pulse and the virus interference. Their alien controllers were adapting, finding ways to work around the damaged systems. Time to test our new weapons, Jake said. He aimed one of his improvised pulse generators at the nearest robot wolf and activated it. The device made a loud, crackling sound and shot out a bolt of electricity. The targeted robot fell over instantly, smoke rising from its mechanical body. 6 left, Maya counted. But Dad, look at what that one is doing. Jake followed Maya's pointing finger and saw something that made his blood run cold. One of the robots had walked over to its fallen companion and was examining the damage. But it wasn't acting like an animal investigating another animal. It was acting like a technician studying a broken machine. They're learning from our attacks, Jake realized. The aliens are figuring out how our weapons work. As if to prove his point, the robot that had been examining the damaged unit suddenly looked directly at Jake through the aircraft window. Its artificial eyes glowed with that strange blue light, and Jake could almost feel the alien intelligence behind them studying him. The robot opened its mouth, but instead of a wolf howl, electronic sounds came out. It was communicating with the other robots, sharing information about human weapons and tactics. Maya, we need to move, Jake said urgently. They're coordinating a real attack this time. But before they could leave the aircraft, the remaining 6 robots split into 2 groups. 3 of them began circling the wreckage from different directions, while the other 3 positioned themselves to block any escape routes. Their movements were precise and calculated, nothing like the confused stumbling from before. They've adapted to the virus, Maya said, watching her laptop screen. The alien pilots are using backup control systems that my virus can't reach. Dad, I think we're in serious trouble. Jake activated his second pulse generator and managed to disable another robot, but the remaining 5 immediately changed their tactics. Instead of attacking directly, they began throwing chunks of ice and rocks at the aircraft, trying to break more windows and force Jake and Maya out into the open. They're using tools, Jake said in amazement. Wild animals don't use tools like that. But these aliens are smart enough to figure out projectile weapons in just a few minutes. A large piece of ice crashed through the side window and cold wind began howling through the cabin. Jake knew they couldn't stay in the aircraft much longer. The robots would eventually break through their defenses, and the cold would kill them, even if the aliens didn't. Maya, I have an idea, Jake said. But it's going to require us to work together perfectly. What do you need me to do? Jake explained his plan quickly. He would use the remaining aircraft components to create a larger, electromagnetic pulse, not powerful enough to disable all the robots, but strong enough to confuse them temporarily. During that confusion, Maya would activate a special program she had been working on. What kind of program? Maya asked. A learning virus, Jake said. Instead of just scrambling their communications, this one will study how they adapt to our attacks and then adapt right back. If they learn to avoid our pulse weapons, the virus will teach their systems to be vulnerable to different frequencies. If they coordinate their attacks, the virus will make them attack each other instead. Maya's eyes lit up with understanding. A virus that evolves as fast as they do. Dad, that's brilliant, but I'll need at least 10 minutes to write the code. Then I'll buy you 10 minutes, Jake said, gathering the last of their aircraft components. Outside, the robotic wolves were getting bolder. They had figured out that the humans inside were running out of weapons and power. One of them had climbed onto the aircraft's wing and was trying to tear through the metal with its mechanical claws. Jake activated his improvised weapon system, creating multiple small electromagnetic pulses that confused the robots without completely disabling them. At the same time, Maya's fingers flew across her keyboard as she wrote the most complex computer program of her life. 5 minutes, Maya called out, as Jake fought to keep the robots away from their position. The robot on the wing managed to tear a hole in the aircraft's roof. Its glowing blue eyes peered down at them through the opening, and Jake could hear mechanical sounds as it prepared to drop into the cabin. 3 minutes, Maya said, still typing frantically. Jake used his last pulse generator to knock the robot off the wing. But the other 4 were closing in from all sides. They had learned to spread out so that his weapons couldn't hit multiple targets at once. 1 minute, Maya announced. The robots began their final assault, moving with perfect coordination toward the aircraft. Jake realized that no matter how smart the virus was, they might not live long enough to see it work. Done, Maya shouted, hitting the enter key on her laptop. Immediately, all 4 remaining robots stopped in their tracks. Their movements became jerky and uncontrolled as Maya's learning virus spread through their systems, adapting faster than their alien controllers could compensate. For the first time since the crash, Jake allowed himself to believe they might actually survive. The 4 remaining robotic wolves stood frozen in the snow, their bodies twitching as Maya's learning virus battled against their alien controllers. Jake watched through the broken aircraft window as sparks flew from their mechanical joints and their glowing blue eyes flickered on and off like broken light bulbs. "It's working," Maya said, staring at her laptop screen in amazement. "The virus is learning faster than they can adapt. Every time their pilots try a new control method, the virus figures out how to block it within seconds." Jake felt a surge of hope, but he knew they weren't safe yet. In the distance, he could hear the sound of aircraft engines. At first he thought it might be rescue helicopters responding to their emergency message, but the sound was wrong. Too smooth, too quiet. "Maya, we have company," Jake said, pointing toward the sky. Through the falling snow, they could see lights approaching from the north. 3 sleek aircraft were flying in perfect formation, moving much faster than any human-built helicopter. Their design was unlike anything Jake had ever seen, smooth and organic, like they had been grown rather than built. "The aliens," Maya whispered. "They're coming to see what happened to their scouts." Jake realized their situation had just become much more dangerous. The robotic wolves had been reconnaissance units, but these aircraft were probably military vessels with real weapons. If the aliens discovered that humans had figured out their plan, they might decide to start their invasion immediately. "Maya, can your virus reach those ships?" Jake asked. Maya checked her laptop. "I don't think so. They're using a different communication system than the ground robots." "But Dad, I'm picking up their transmissions. They're confused about why their scouts stopped reporting." Jake watched the alien ship circle overhead. They seemed to be scanning the area, trying to understand what had happened to their robotic wolves. One of the ships landed about 100 yards away from the crashed aircraft, and Jake could see a ramp opening on its side. "They're sending someone out to investigate," Jake said. "We need to be ready." But before Jake could prepare any kind of defense, something unexpected happened. The 4 frozen robotic wolves suddenly came back to life, but their behavior was completely different. Instead of threatening Jake and Maya, they turned toward the landed alien ship and began walking toward it. "Maya, what's happening?" Jake asked. Maya was typing rapidly on her laptop, her face lit up with excitement. "Dad, the virus didn't just scramble their systems, it completely reprogrammed them. The robots think the alien ship is the enemy now." Jake watched in amazement as the 4 robotic wolves approached the alien vessel. The aliens inside the ship must have been just as confused, because they didn't react until it was too late. The wolves attacked the ship with their mechanical claws and teeth, tearing at its hull and trying to disable its engines. Alarms began sounding from inside the alien ship, and Jake could see creatures running around inside through the open ramp. They looked somewhat like large insects with multiple arms and silvery skin that reflected light like metal. These were the real aliens, not the robotic shells they had been hiding inside. "The virus is spreading to the ship's systems," Maya announced. When the wolves made physical contact, they transferred the virus through their communication links. The alien ship began behaving erratically. Its engines fired in random directions, spinning it around in circles. Its weapon systems activated and started shooting at empty air. The learning virus was taking control of their technology just like it had taken control of the robotic wolves. The other 2 alien ships in the sky tried to help their companions on the ground, but they made a critical mistake. They opened communication channels to coordinate their rescue effort, and Maya's virus immediately spread to their systems as well. "All 3 ships are infected," Maya said with satisfaction. "The virus is learning their technology faster than they can shut it down." Jake watched as the 3 alien vessels crashed into the snow around them. The ships weren't destroyed, but they were completely out of control. Their alien crews were trapped inside malfunctioning vessels, unable to fly away or call for help. In the distance, Jake could hear the real sound of rescue helicopters approaching. His emergency message had finally reached human authorities, and help was on the way. But more importantly, the first alien attack on Earth had been turned into a complete disaster for the invaders. "Maya, your virus just won humanity's first victory in an interplanetary war," Jake said proudly. Maya was still monitoring the virus's progress on her laptop. Dad, it's doing more than that. The virus has accessed the alien communication network. It's spreading to their main fleet, wherever that is. The aliens are receiving completely false information about Earth's defenses. Jake realized the full scope of what his daughter had accomplished. The alien invasion force, wherever it was hiding, would receive reports that Earth was defended by incredibly advanced technology. They would think humans had weapons that could instantly take control of alien systems and turn their own technology against them. They'll be afraid to attack, Jake said. They'll think Earth is much more dangerous than it really is. Or they'll send a much bigger force, Maya pointed out. But either way, we've bought Earth time to prepare real defenses. The rescue helicopters landed near their crashed aircraft, and Jake could see human soldiers jumping out with weapons ready. They had come prepared for anything, thanks to Jake's warning message about alien invaders. Jake helped Maya gather their equipment as the rescue team approached. Her laptop contained all the data they had collected about the alien technology, plus the virus code that had just saved Earth from its first alien attack. Mr. Rivers? Ms. Rivers? The rescue team leader called out. We're here to get you out of here. We also need to debrief you about your emergency message regarding extraterrestrial contact. Jake looked at the crashed alien ships and the disabled robotic wolves scattered around their crash site. We have a lot to tell you, he said. As they were helped onto the rescue helicopter, Jake could see more military aircraft arriving to secure the alien crash sites. Maya's virus was still active, spreading through any alien technology that tried to communicate with the outside universe. Dad, Maya said as they flew toward safety. Do you think we really stopped an invasion? Jake looked back at the crash site where human soldiers were already examining alien technology that would advance Earth's science by decades. I think we did something even better, he said. We showed the universe that humanity doesn't give up, no matter how impossible the odds seem. 3 months later, Jake and Maya stood in a military briefing room watching as Earth's first anti-alien defense satellites were launched into orbit. The satellites were built using technology recovered from the crashed alien ships, combined with improvements suggested by Maya's virus analysis. The alien invasion fleet, wherever it was, had gone completely silent after receiving the false reports from Maya's virus. Intelligence agencies around the world believed the aliens had either retreated or were afraid to approach Earth after their reconnaissance mission had failed so spectacularly. The virus is still active in their networks, Maya reported to the assembled military officials. As long as they keep trying to use their quantum communication systems, it will keep feeding them false information about our capabilities. Jake smiled as he watched his daughter brief some of the most important people on Earth about her computer virus. She had grown up a lot since their crash in Alaska, but she was still the same creative, determined girl who had refused to give up when everything seemed hopeless. Outside the briefing room window, Jake could see construction beginning on Earth's first quantum communication defense grid. Humanity was preparing for the day when the aliens might return, but they would be ready this time. The universe had learned an important lesson about humans. They were far more dangerous when they were trapped and desperate than when they were comfortable and safe. And Jake Rivers and his daughter Maya had proven that the human spirit could overcome any challenge, no matter how advanced or alien it might be.